Well, good morning and a very special welcome to our CCF online masterclass on the Victorian Government's Recycle First policy. It's fair to say we're under very challenging times as we enter a further extension of the 7-day circuit breaker lockdown period here in Melbourne. For many of you joining us from regional Victoria, I'm sure you're pleased to see an easing of restrictions from midnight tonight. Firstly, I'd like to introduce myself because I've got many guests here who are not members of the CCF. My name is John Kilgour. I'm the CEO of the Civil Contractors Federation here in Victoria, and I'm really looking forward to the next hour or so where we have a great opportunity to hear and engage with one of the industry's leaders in promoting the use of sustainable products in major infrastructure projects here in Victoria. But before I introduce Tony more formally, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land in which we are meeting right across the state. I'm here on the Wurundjeri people's land, and I'd like to pay my respects to elders both past, present and emerging. A little bit about the logistics for this morning and our online masterclass. You'll see in the right-hand side of your screen a series of columns or buttons. There is a chat room. I'd encourage you to engage. You'll see who's participating in the webinar this morning, and you have the opportunity to engage in chat amongst your industry colleagues. At the same time, there is a Q&A button and session that we'll be conducting with Tony, and I would encourage you to put your questions into the Q&A platform. It makes it a lot easier rather than the chat room for me to moderate and host the Q&A session with Tony. You'll also see a polls area, and I know during this morning's presentation we have the opportunity to interact and engage with Tony, and he will be running a series of polls, probably about 4 of them, and that will be the area in which you can engage and participate in the polls, and Tony will give you an indication of that during his presentation. And at the same time, Tony's made available through MRPV the handouts regarding today's session, and he'll refer to those during today. It would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the many government departments and agencies and clients who are on board today, and in particular the support that we're receiving from Major Roads Projects Victoria, and I would like to acknowledge and thank them for their continued support of CCF. Look, in setting the scene for this morning's webinar, I think we're all acutely aware of the state government's commitment to optimising the use of recycled and reused materials across the rail and road infrastructure and construction. The Ecologiq program and the Recycle First policy provides a crucial opportunity to drive significant change in the reuse of waste material across Victoria's Big Build program, which is delivering about 120 projects with a spend of around $80 billion. The Recycle First policy is the first step to achieving this and requires contracts or contractors on these major infrastructure projects to demonstrate how they will optimise their use of sustainable materials. So it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Ecologics Director Tony Alicio, who is an infrastructure industry leader and a passionate advocate for a purposefully greener future. Tony leads a dynamic team that aims to optimise the use of recycled and reused materials on Victoria's transport projects, change the approach to technical standards and specifications, and importantly, build market capacity and capability. Before joining Ecologiq, Tony spent 8 years with Fulton Hogan, Australia, where he designed, developed and attained board endorsement for their corporate sustainability strategy. The plan encompassed UN Sustainable Development Goals, a targeted carbon emissions reduction program and recycling initiatives. Tony completed the University of Cambridge's Sustainability Leadership Program in 2018, and inspired by the opportunity to build a society where sustainability philosophies are put into action through carbon reduction and the development of a circular economy. Ecologics Director Tony Alicio will delve into the Recycle First policy, which came into effect for all new contracts for major transport infrastructure projects in March 2020. Tony will also provide us an overview of the policy's objectives, profiles, successful case studies, and detailed requirements contractors must meet during project tender and delivery phases to ensure recycled and reused Victorian materials are optimised. Now, Ecologiq is a Victorian government initiative which will optimise the use of recycled and reused materials, driven by the transport projects that I mentioned in Victoria's Big Build program. The program is making use of recycled and reused materials, business as usual, as helps Victoria innovate and grow its domestic recycling capabilities. More importantly, let's build local markets and find new uses for recycled content. So before we hear from Tony, let's hear a little bit more about Ecologiq.
The future of Victorian infrastructure is green. Recycling Victoria has laid out a 10-year roadmap to a circular economy, a future where our state's public and private sectors will unite to prioritise sustainability. At the core of this are our public assets, the roads and railroads that connect us and ignite possibilities. But where does the change to green thinking begin? The Recycled First policy. Recycled First will require transport infrastructure projects to optimise the use of Victorian recycled and reused materials. This will see the use of recycled aggregates, glass, plastic, timber, steel, ballast, crushed brick, crumb rubber and reclaimed asphalt pavement take precedence over virgin materials. For information, technical advice and support on bringing your sustainable project innovations to life, drop Ecologiq a line. Recycled First, supporting purposely greener infrastructure.
Fantastic. Hello, everyone. Hope you can hear me, and welcome to today's discussion around optimising recycled and reused materials in transport infrastructure projects. I'm Tony. You've heard a little bit about me from John. I might use him to introduce me everywhere I go, because I sound a lot better than I actually thought I was there. So that's great. Thanks so much, John. And a really good introduction to the Recycled First policy as well. And I really do appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you here. I think it's a great opportunity to, hopefully, to explain what this Recycled First policy is all about, perhaps how to go about implementing it a bit, some good examples of that being implemented well, and also then talk a little bit about future opportunities. I think in John's introduction, he spoke a little bit about the fact that there's $80 billion worth of work in the big build, and that the Recycled First policy is a requirement of all ongoing contracts, all future and ongoing contracts. And in fact, there are a number currently in play right now where the Recycled First policy applies, and it's something new. So it's an opportunity to explain that to all of you here, and to perhaps clear up any questions that you might have about it. I think it comes from two places. One, and I think the first thing is, just as a bit of an overview, is that this whole world of circular economy and of the recycling and reuse and the repurposing of waste, and we shouldn't even call it waste anymore. They're just resources. Some people call them secondary materials, but they are resources, really, is the way to think about it. And it's a whole societal shift. I think we're seeing a fair bit of it right now. Anyone who turns on their television and sees the advertisement for a new shampoo, they will probably be telling you that their plastic containers are now made from 100% recycled plastic. Everybody is getting on board. It's really needed for the sustainability drive that is happening worldwide. And it's important to say we in the construction industry need to do our bit. We're part of it. We're part of society, and we have a big part of a need for it. And when you think about the fact that there's all of this material that's available, and we have a big build that's spending $80 billion and is absolutely voraciously hungry for materials, there's a great opportunity to turn what could be a problem into a solution and actually provide great benefits for society. So I think that's sort of the noble cause part of it, and I think that's really important to note. It's also worth mentioning that on a practical sense, the Australian government and the COAG group, all states, are no longer going to export and offshore their waste materials. So stuff that's been going to China and the rest of Asia that we've heard a fair bit about, that's not going to happen anymore. So that's going to bring down a mountain of more new and emerging materials, things like plastics and rubber and those other things you may have seen in the little video that played. So there's this mounting problem, if you want to call it that. There's this mounting concern about growth in landfill and what are we going to do with all of this material that we're generating that we can no longer just put on a ship and send away. And there's a whole range of solutions that we need to take. The first one is, well, let's not use so much, or let's minimize that amount of waste to begin with, and all the way through to where can we reuse and recycle those materials into other applications. And that's where the Recycled First program and where Ecologiq comes to play. So for all of you guys who are contractors and girls who are contractors, and for all of you who are interested, I guess there's an opportunity to sort of walk now through the Recycled First policy and how it applies. So it's really built on the fact that, yes, we need to do this. It's here to stay and it's going to be around for a while. I think the thing I wanted to say just before I really start into the slides also is that Ecologiq is here really to help you get there and help you achieve that. We want success for you, success for the big build, and the way to do that is to collaborate and work together. And we're here to help you go through it, so that if it seems difficult or if there are things that you need help with, we're here for that. So so that's like a bit of an intro, if you like, and I might just start to step you through some of those comments. This really just covers what I spoke about. We know that materials are no longer going offshore. It's a big issue. And one of the objectives that we really have in place is to actually make recycling and reuse a really intentional and uniform approach. Make it business as usual. We haven't invented recycling. There's a lot of you here who know that you use reclaimed asphalt and crushed concrete and lots of other construction and demolition waste, and has been used as recycled content in the past. Probably done on a project by project ad hoc opportunistic way, where it made a buck or where it made sense or where it was logistically available. And we're looking to turn that into something far more intentional and specific. And that's what the Recycled First policy and the Recycled First plans that are going into these new contracts is really trying to do. So one of the ways we do that is directly through the policy and by putting that into contract requirements. The Recycled First policy sits under this whole Recycling Victoria approach. As I said, a whole of society and a whole of government approach to recycling and reuse of waste materials, secondary materials that can now be used into transport projects. And if you see those arrows there, you'll also see DOT at the bottom of that, the old Vic roads. So while the big build has started and has got Recycled First requirements into its new contracts, the Department of Transport, who are obviously also another major client for many of you here, will apply the Recycled First policy from the 1st of January next year, and they'll start to roll it out into all of their world as well. So you'll see more and more of it as you go forward through the contracting world. Okay. Pretty simple sort of approach when you look at your procurement and delivery obligation. At EOI phase, expression of interest, it's really a requirement to demonstrate your understanding of Recycled First principles and maybe some high-level stuff of what you might be able to do. Then during the tender phase, you'll be asked to develop a Recycled First plan, and I'll go through an example of a Recycled First plan later in the presentation. And then in delivery, it's important to actually achieve against the plan, but you'll also be required to report against that plan. Now, I'm not trying to make life difficult for anyone. We're trying to make this work for people. So it's really we will really note how Ecologiq will work with you and with the project teams from Major Roads Projects Victoria and Major Transport Infrastructure Authority to actually make sure that that's feasible, practical, and works for all concerned. So a little more about the tender phase, which is probably really critical for anyone who's a contractor or a tenderer on any of our projects. There will be a specific criteria which will assess how the contractor's Recycle First plan promotes the Recycle First policy. So there'll be specific scope and requirements of the Recycle First plan, and contractors will be required to complete and submit a Recycle First plan that'll include those three things you see there: an overview of the proposed approach, a specific recycle and reuse material commitment, and a set of commitments against a particular materials, and we'll show you a table of that in a little while, and also some reporting obligations that go with that. It's also worth noting that the Recycled First plan is going to ask contractors and tenderers to optimise the amount of recycled material you can put into a project within the existing standards and guidelines. So there are lots of opportunities within the existing standards and specifications that allow for recycled content, and we're asking you to optimise against that in the Recycled First policy. Beyond that, we're also welcoming innovation. So the opportunity to do something new and different with emerging materials or with a different product is really something that we're keen to see and hear about. And we're working pretty hard in our own R&D team and with the supply chain within this industry to find and promote emerging materials and emerging solutions. And so we can work with you on that. Often there are barriers to putting a new material in. You guys probably know exactly what those barriers are. And we're here to help break down some of those barriers and help get through and perhaps get some of those materials built into new projects and eventually become business as usual as well. So there's a bit of a process that goes along with delivering a project. It starts at business case level. There's a pre-procurement level. There's a procurement stage where tenders are submitted, and there's the delivery phase. And Ecologiq is working across all of those phases of a project to look back at business case and say what might be possible in terms of applying Recycled First principles and recycled materials into a project. At the pre-procurement phase, we're doing some work, and we're doing some work directly to develop opportunities registers. So in that space, we're looking at all of the materials that are required for a project and having a look at what is possible, what is an opportunity to use as a recycled material, what are the specifications and standards actually allow us to do, and to provide the guidance material. So as a tenderer, you come to the tender with this provided to you, saying, here is a list of opportunities that here's one we've baked before, if you like, and here's an opportunity for you to take and consider when you're putting your tenders forward. And then through that procurement phase, you will submit what you propose to do. That'll be workshopped and supported and be finalised into a Recycled First plan that is then delivered through the project. So in practice, as I said, all projects and all of the current projects that have been released since March of last year have Recycled First policy requirements and the procurement practices within those built into them. There's more than 30 Victorian big build projects that currently have them or will include them just in the next 12 to 18 months. And there'll be lots of opportunities to investigate things like recycled plastic fibre into non-structural concrete, plastic drainage pipes, reclaimed asphalt, plastic, glass, crushed concrete and brick in road pavements, and ancillary things like recycled plastic roadside seating or signage, the like. Crumbed rubber in pavement seals and in asphalt is another potential opportunity. This also applies to rail. So the big build is a road and rail set of projects, and there are a couple of big rail projects on the go that I'm sure everybody knows about, things like the Melbourne Airport Rail Link, the suburban rail loop, and regional rail Victoria, with a number of upgrades going on. So it applies to all of those levels, including the level crossing removal program. And as I said, Department of Transport will take this on the 1st of January. And from there, I expect it will flow through and cascade into local government as well. And we are getting a lot of interest from the local government space about recycled material and recycled content as well. So it's a world that's growing, and it's a world of opportunity for you and for us to actually achieve something great. And the policy's the kickstarter to all of that, I guess. So what can you do, and how do you know about what to do with your commitments when you go into a tender? I'm sure you've got people have different levels of expertise and are able to access people with expertise to actually understand what can be done. You can go to your suppliers and ask for what they can possibly do and what they currently do, what can be done as well. And you can also look at some of the materials that we're providing from Ecologiq. And if you see in that black corner in the right hand side there, recycled materials in road infrastructure. This is a reference guide that has actually taken all of the DOT or Vic Road standards and specifications and the Australian standards, and had a look and filtered it by recycled content, so that you can take a material application and you will get guidance directly as to what's permissible as a recycled alternative or a recycled percentage of material that can be incorporated into that particular material application. That reference guide is available on our knowledge share site, the Ecologic knowledge share site. It's an interactive tool, so you can click through the document that you see a snapshot of there, and it will take you through to the actual specific requirements or specific allowances, and take you right through to the specification or standard specification that relates to it as well. I guess the aim here is that right throughout standards and specifications, if you pick any of them up and read through them, you'll read through them, and at some point you'll find dotted through it an opportunity to do some recycled material in one specification. Then you'll move to another one. Say you go from pavements to asphalt. Each one of them will have their references scattered through them on recycled opportunities. What we've really done is filtered by that recycled content, so that rather than having to read through an entire specification, you can go to this reference guide and it will take you directly to that particular point. If you want access to that reference guide, you'll see an email address there at the bottom of the page here, ecologic@roadprojects.vic.gov.au. If you make a request through that site, access will be provided to you. It's an extranet site that's available to government and to contractors on our projects, and we'll then grant access to you, and you can take your way through it. You'll see that reference guide for roads. There are two other reference guides in terms of materials. There's a rail reference guide, and there's also an ancillary products reference guide. I spoke earlier about roadside seating, those types of applications as well. So there are three reference guides that you can work through that will provide a resource for you to use when you're preparing your when your approach to recycling on your contract. Okay, so that's sort of how to go about it, I guess. And you may have some questions. I don't know. We'll get to them at some point during the at the end of the presentation. I thought what I might do now is just give you an example of what we think is a well-prepared recycled first plan. And I do need to give a shout out to Fulton Hogan. I know some people heard that I once worked for them, but that's no reason for us using Fulton Hogan. They've just presented one on one of our most recent projects, and we're pretty happy with the way it came out. And Fulton Hogan really kindly have allowed us to present this here now. It's obviously their IP, and so I ask you to respect that. I'll talk you through the slides that you'll see on the page here, and I know there may be some there were some Fulton Hogan people who registered to attend this session, so if you're there, thank you very much, and really appreciate the opportunity to give people a bit of a heads up as to what a plan might look like, what a good plan might look like. So here we go. Now, hopefully you can see this okay. The screen, we tested it, and the screen should be okay to see. I will talk through the highlights anyway as we go through it. So here's Fulton Hogan with their particular plan on their project, Craigieburn Road, actually it is. A bit of an opening page there, which we won't worry about, a contents page, glossary of terms. Let's move on. A bit of an overview. So this really talks a little bit about the Recycled First plan and Fulton Hogan integrating their capability to actually apply that to those commitments to this project. Importantly, some roles and responsibilities, and you know, on this project, Fulton Hogan has outlined all of the key people in its project, from project director, design managers, and you'll see environment and sustainability manager and sustainability advisors who have some specific responsibilities in ensuring that the Recycled First plan's established and implemented, and that the requirements for reporting and managing it are undertaken as well, and they've set a fair bit of those into those roles there. You'll also see, though, the procurement manager has some work in it, and some technical design leads, which are really important as well. I think it's worth noting that that again, Ecologiq is really happy to work with the project, with the project lead teams from the government side, and with the contractor through a collaborative tender process to ensure that we get the optimised and best outcome for the project and for the amount of recycled content that's in there. So once we know who's involved and what they're doing, really critically, move into section 4, which is the Recycled First commitments. And so Fulton Hogan have put together a list of opportunities and ideas that they will continue to investigate and implement where applicable. So this is really a discussion piece about the opportunities, where they are, and what they will do, and what they might be able to do, and what they will further investigate. And so you can look at that, and it's pretty simple. Again, you can see there's a material application such as wearing coarse in this case, and pavement types with asphalts. And there's a discussion there about, in that very first thing, about plastics, and you'll see a TBC there because plastic and asphalt is something that people may have heard about. It's fairly new. It's not currently written into standards and specifications. However, there may be opportunities to get approval to use those in the wearing course, or to use a plastic product in the wearing course, and they're going to pursue that. Again, some work that perhaps we can help with, and Department of Transport Standards and Specifications team and the project team can help to facilitate as well. As you look through as you go through that, there you'll see intermediate courses of asphalt, real opportunities to use higher percentages of reclaimed asphalt, and to get approvals that are conditional, if you like, to use higher than what is currently in the specification allowances for reclaimed asphalt. There's also things like glass fines that can be used in lieu of natural sands as well. And so you go through the whole list, and you can see your way through it there, through earthworks and lower subbase and pavement types that talk about crushed rock and cement treated crushed rock. And they're pretty clear about what suppliers can provide, whether they can provide a 100% replacement or a 30% or 40% replacement, and how that's going to work. So it's a really good starting point from my perspective. You look at drainage, and drainage, there's talk about recycled plastic drainage pipes. There's also talk about the concrete pipes and the use of fly ash and slag within those concrete pipes as well. So a range of materials and a range of options and a range of things that can be done and that can be explored further through the different stages of the contract. And it actually goes on to a second page there where we're talking about subsoil, some bus bays, and the use of perhaps plastic fibres as a replacement for reinforced steel in non-structural concrete. So a whole range of opportunities there as well. We then so that's really like specific type opportunities. And then there's an opportunity to talk further about other considerations that might be thought about, such as putting a request for recycle first policy into their procurement request to quote. So actually putting it out to the market to say, what can you do? One of the things I like about Recycle First is that rather than us coming along and saying, we want you to put plastic in your asphalt or plastic in your concrete, or we want you to come and give us a trial of this particular product, it's really coming to you and saying, this is what's allowable, this is what's permissible in the standards and specifications, go for it, see what you can do. And also, get out there and find out what else can be done innovatively, and we'll support that. So it's really trying to harness the power and the energy that is within the entire, and I would say the intellect and entrepreneurship and capability that's within the entire network, from the supply chain through the contractor, through to people who hold standards and specifications, through to R&D research organisations, all the way through to us as the client in there with you as well, trying to make this work. So it's really about harnessing the best of everything, I think, as opposed to being very specific and pointed about saying you will do this and you will do that. It's about, let's create something, I think, and this plan actually does a good job of talking about that through from development phase, design phase, and on the way through construction. I could go through this in a lot more detail and continue to go through it. But you can see that as we go along and as you get further and further through the project, you'll tend to refine and identify where the opportunities and quantify them and crystallize them into something that is real and tangible and doable. And so those things then can be locked into a commitment and a reporting situation that says, yeah, we're doing this and we've done it, and this is how it's come about. I've got no doubt along the way there'll be barriers and issues and risks to manage. That's what we're here for, I think. That's why we're contractors. That's why Ecologiq exists as well. And then the fifth phase, innovation. So I talked a little bit about harnessing the power and energy of the entire network, and this is where it can come to light. And it's really interesting to have a look here, and there are things that are happening, like putting up the top here, seeking to use up to 30% RAP in type SS. Refer updated section of the specification. So, I can tell you, and many of you will know, and again, it's the industry who brought this forward, and then through work with Ecologic, with the Department of Transport Standards and Specs team, and with people like ARRB, we've turned a product type SS asphalt that has a specification allowance of 0% RAP into an alternative that says you can put 30% RAP into this particular asphalt. And in fact, it's now been incorporated, and that's being done on the M80 project. It's being done at Mordialloc, and it's about to be done on the Monash Freeway as well. And really importantly for me is that there's also a pathway that has now taken its way into the specification, and it is now written into the specification that 30% RAP can be used. So we've turned what was an industry idea that found its way into projects, was probably being done outside of state government projects, if you like, and trialled in places, brought into state government processes, facilitated through that, and then turned into business as usual for the future in a standard and specification. So it's now open for everybody to use in any particular application, and is compliant with the Department of Transport's standard for asphalt, the 407 standard. So it's an example, a simple example of good ideas turning into increased use of recycled material as a way of doing business from now on. And if you look through here, you'll see various other potentials and various other opportunities that Fulton Hogan are pursuing. A lot of it to do with, and this talks through the issue of how the RAP and how the quantity of RAP can be achieved, and what the issues are in trying to make that happen. So so there's a fair bit of detail in the plan there as well, which is excellent from my perspective as well. A section on supply chain management, so really important, obviously, and I think John mentioned it at the start, and I mentioned again that Ecologic's work is really about creating end markets, supporting contractors to deliver the recycle first policy in those end markets, and bringing supply chain opportunities through the market. So actually developing supply markets and emerging products that are coming from those as well. So really important that there's some discussion around supply chain management, and clearly supply chain's critical. If the stuff's not there, you can't use it. So if you're not well connected to suppliers because they're not your traditional suppliers and you don't know about them, that's another issue as well. A management of the supply chain is also pretty important when we consider how that's going to apply. Need to make sure the material is available, that the quality and the standards are available, that the costs are right, and so on. I think if you read through that, you'll see some comments on, having early engagement with suppliers, and I've got to say, that's obviously a critical and really impactful thing, especially when you're trying to bring new products or different products or more recycled content to a project. There's going to be some lead time and some effort that's going to have to be made to get that across the line, if you like, from a standards and specifications point of view, from a logistics point of view, even from a price or cost point of view as well. And it follows here as well, identifying some of the key recycled material suppliers of most important to make that happen. So Fulton Hogan has talked about how they're going to go about that, who some of those suppliers might be, and what some of the critical issues like site location, production rates, other major projects sourcing similar materials which may come into conflict and may cause some competition for materials that may have some flow-on impacts as well. And then down below, some identification of concrete, asphalt, and piping and precast suppliers. And then the reporting requirements. So who's going to do it? What the expectations are. They're that pretty straightforward, I think, but really important as well. And there will be a fair bit of work to be done to actually keep that information flowing through. I think if you're a contractor, maybe your knowledge and awareness of how much recycled content is going into a product that you're receiving isn't all there. The supplier probably knows more about what's in its product than anybody else. So there's a bit of work to actually extract that information and bring it through the chain and up through to the recycle first reporting requirements and through the contractor. We really want to work with you on your first recycle first submissions to help you through it, understand what the issues might be, and try to make that as easy and comfortable for you as possible. And what would a project or contract be without a consideration of risks and mitigations? So clearly some opportunity to discuss and talk about what the approach to mitigation might be, without going through that in a group, there's a whole heap of detail in there, but it's really important to talk about the fact that some of those requirements might be things like being dependent. Crushed concrete and asphalt, you need to be clear of contamination. You need to meet EPA requirements. It needs to be available in sufficient quantities. And you need to be able to perhaps partner with some of your suppliers to actually demonstrate that the product is going to perform as expected. There's a comment in here about concurrent projects competing for the supply chain availability. So clearly, as it's there's a bit of a chicken and egg thing around suppliers and markets. But as the demand grows, the supply chain will grow. So it's going to be a continual process of more and more people asking for more and more recycled materials. We'll find out where the balance is in the long term, and project by project and location by location that may vary. I think I think without going through the rest of it, it's a really important piece to actually understand that, hey, we're doing something a little bit new, a little bit different. We're requiring a real effort and a real intentional approach to it. It's not going to come without some roadblocks along the way or some issues or hurdles to overcome. And I do want to re-emphasize again, we really understand that. We're really flexible about that and really want to be able to work with our project teams who are learning about this as well, and the contractors, and working with the supply chain as well. And I guess that's Ecologiq's role, is to actually be the facilitator and mediator amongst a lot of that stuff where we possibly can. Okay, so Appendix A is the actual table. And if I've got this right, there's a table. So this is an example of a table. It's not the table for the project. And again, hey, real shout out to Fulton Hogan. It's really good of you to share that and to share it with industry. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. I also can tell you that the template for that that is in the handouts section of this bit of very clever software that we're using today. So that's available to everybody here to actually grab a copy of that template if you don't already have it or haven't seen it yet. And so this table is a simple example of what a recycled first commitment ends up looking like. So pretty straightforward. What is the application? What is the material application? Whether it's landscaping or drainage, or precast barriers or maintenance strips or bus bays, shared user paths and pavements. The material type that is specified or that is expected to be used is mentioned. What is the recycled or reused material option or opportunity amongst that? Whether it's timber, topsoil, one on site, which is a reuse opportunity, and people will always try to make the most of what materials are on site, so that's great. Whether it's recycled mulch, recycled plastic for geotextiles, glass fines in drainage bedding rather than natural sand, crushed concrete, slags, fly ashes, cement treated crushed concrete, and reclaimed asphalt, for example, are the types of materials that could be used as recycled content into those virgin materials or as full-on replacements. And that's then put into the limits that are there, whether it's a 100% replacement or a 30 or 20% replacement, or in this case, what do the specs allow? They might vary depending on what the product is. And then a commitment. So this is what the contractor says, I will be able to do, what I believe I'll be able to do, and what quantities I believe I'll be able to put forward as recycled content, and what does that commitment look like against the allowable specification component. And this then becomes something to report against as we go along in a project, just like you do with all your other materials. Be well aware that you're cumulatively putting in crushed rock class 4 or whatever it is, and you're able to see that and track that is a 100% or 70% or whatever it is recycled material use. So that table is sort of the end result, if you like, and something to report against, and pretty simple to do so, we hope, but with a fair bit of work to actually ensure that those recycled content options are actually being applied. All right, that's sort of that's sort of the end of that's how you do it and why you do it and how you do it and who we are. I wanted to talk a little bit more about how we can help and a little bit of a showcase of what sort of things have been happening in industry so far. So at Fulton Hogan, they've put together an entire plan and an entire program, and that will culminate in that sort of table. Where Ecologiq has sort of been in the game, if you like, from the start to the beginning, is talking about those various supply chain issues from the market supply through to the contractor, and then through to the government reporting and outcomes requirements and the basic success of the recycle first policy. So our industry stream at Ecologiq really looks at the market and the people that can supply materials to us. So it's about building the supply chain through the resource sharing, through networking, and through identifying opportunities for trials and research funding support, which we're doing a bit of at the moment. Some of the innovative things we've done is we just completed our first Shark Tank for Supplier. So it was a great event, only held last week, where 4 suppliers came along with their innovations and pitched them to a series of experts. So anyone who's seen Shark Tank, we plagiarized that sort of concept and had them pitch this. It was all done online. So they came along with their innovations, pitched it to some experts who asked us some questions and supported them through that process. There's a whole bunch of us and a whole bunch of audience members who could sit, like yourselves, who could sit along and watch it and go along for the ride. It'll be interesting to see where that goes. We're still got to go back and see if we can find opportunities to take those innovations into perhaps trial or further research programs, but we'd love to get them onto some trials. And I think when we do it, we will do some more of these Shark Tanks every couple of months. There'll be another episode. We'll look forward to broadening the scope of it and allowing perhaps others, and perhaps inviting contractors and others in so they can have a look at this and say, oh wow, I might try that product on my project. That might be a really interesting thing to do. And as I said, we're also looking at research and development partners for some of those innovations as well. We've also held some buyer-supplier exchanges. It's sort of like a speed dating online thing where we've put some emerging suppliers with contractors and had them meet virtually for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or so in and then bounce them to another set of suppliers and buyers so they could just get to know one another and really try to help build the supply chain as well. And we're going to do that every quarter as well. And a fourth thing we're doing is actually profiling the materials demand and the supplier mapping. So we've actually put together and will be available by August a demand profile for recycled materials out of the Big Build project that will be set out geographically across Victoria where the demand is. Will be set out by product type. So you'll be able to see where the Big Build projects are and how much recycled asphalt or crushed concrete or plastic or whatever the product may be is going to be needed over the next 5 years. It should give, if you're a contractor, it should give you some idea of what your commitments and opportunities are to make commitments on those projects can be, and overlaying that with a supplier market, actually seeing where the suppliers of products are. So we'll have a supplier map as well that will overlay with that. The demand model will, we hope, provide suppliers with incentive to actually build and grow their businesses at the same time. It also gives government agencies who work very hard in market development and in finding uses for recycled materials, a good overview of what that's going to look like through the Big Build and where they should put their energies as well. So that's our industry stream. And I would also add that Sustainability Victoria has a supplier database as well. So we're going to put a supplier map together, but this supplier database is available right now. If you visit that website, there you will see it's basically a yellow pages of people who supply circular economy type materials and opportunities to contractors. Now it's a pretty broad database. It captures things outside of the construction world as well, but it's also very useful for trying to find your construction partners if you're looking for somebody new. Here's a couple of guys in the team. So I'll go to the bottom first. Doi, who's the industry manager. I've just been talking about the industry stream. So Doi's working to build the supply chain capability. He's the Shark Tank guru and facilitator, the host of Shark Tank, and he's also working on those other things that we just spoke about earlier. Dor's a great guy to get involved with if you're looking for supply of materials. Luke, our project implementation manager, he's the go-to guy and the critical lead for the implementation of the Recycled First plans into projects. So he works very closely with the project teams and with the contractors as we build tenders and build projects to fruition to actually get that Recycled First plan and the Recycled First table finalised and working for you. Working very hard with both project teams and contractors to facilitate a good outcome and get the Recycled First commitments set up for success in every project. If you want to contact anyone in the Ecologic team, myself included, you now know about Dor and Luke. Again, that Ecologiq at roadprojects.vic.gov.au is our sort of universal email address. Drop us a line, tell us what you're interested in, and we'll get back to you for sure. Okay, so what I thought I might talk about now, as we head towards the end of the presentation, is some of the more emerging and priority materials. And they're priority materials because the government has seen that these products are coming, have got a great deal of supply and not so much demand. So supply is outstripping demand, and we're looking for uses for these types of materials. Plastic, you will hear, I think you will have, other than COVID, if you're reading the paper and can get a bit further into it beyond the COVID stuff, you will hear a lot about plastics, a lot about soft film plastics, about Coles and Woolies and others trying to build factories to actually make their Kit Kat wrappers out of recycled soft film plastic, use of plastic in recycled plastic bottles and the like. But still, there's a lot more plastic than there is uses for it at the moment, and the construction industry is a place where we can really play our part as well, whether it's in asphalt, in noise walls, things like bollards and wheel stops, the drainage we've spoken about a bit, and for use in, we're considering for use in things like railway sleepers. Recycled plastic railway sleepers is potentially a great opportunity, into geotextiles, and perhaps even into concrete applications as well. One of the other emerging materials is organics. I know in my suburb I now put my food waste into the organics bin along with my green waste. There's going to be a heap of organic material available that really can be used as a recycled product for compost, for mulch, for geotechnical fill, for soil conditioners, any of that landscaping type stuff. We should be looking at the opportunities that might progress from recycled organics. And rubber, it's used extensively in bitumen spray sealing. There's something like 55 million car tyres stacked around the place in Australia. There's a heap of them in Victoria, some of them legally, some of them just stacked up wherever people can find places for them. They're a menace. They catch fire from time to time, and they're a waste. They're not going to be able to be held in landfill forever. We need to find uses for them. And we know that bitumen and asphalt is one potential place. We're looking at other surface treatments for it as well. And I think there's also conversion of rubber to energy, which is perhaps something that's not in the construction space right now, but might be thought about. But it might even be in retaining walls, in small level retaining walls that tyres can be used. Opportunities to actually to find uses for those products is really growing. I think outside of the construction industry, but maybe able to come back into the construction industry, things like textiles and paper will start to see their way into the vernacular as well. If you can think about how to deconstruct textiles and get the polyester out of it and use that, that'd be a great outcome as well. So, but they're our priority waste materials that we at Ecologiq are really focusing on right now. And that includes some R&D work being done by the likes of Monash University and others, plenty of others, RMIT. It also includes working with Tyre Stewardship Australia to look at opportunities to trial things like permeable pavements, and where a heap of crumbed rubber can be put into those type of pavements, and doing some R&D on plastics in in growing the amount of rubber and plastic that can be used in asphalts as well as spray seal. So anyone that was involved, I mentioned the 3 freeways in Melbourne, the M80, Mordialloc and Monash, using something like an extra 70,000 tonnes of reclaimed asphalt as a result of getting that 30% RAP approval through. And actually, I'm really chuffed that it's now in the specification, because that's the full cycle now. It's now locked in as a business as usual approach to doing that type of work. I think that's really exciting. A lot of people have heard about plastic bags and print cartridges in asphalt. Many of you may have heard about that. There's been some work done on state government roads with that, and local government roads as well. I think importantly, again, these things have to go from just being like a nice idea that become a trial, and every council, every local government does 1 or 2 roads like that, and gets a bit of publicity on it, and it's a good thing. It's how you generate and turn that into an ongoing, sustainable way of doing business that really is the next step for us, I think. And I mentioned recycled plastic sleepers. There's been some trials of that. Richmond Station's had them installed for some time, and that trial's now come to an end. And there's a few other stations around Victoria that are around the Melbourne metro area that have got them in at the moment. They're also being trialled in Queensland on a main road freight line, and that trial's continuing. And we're currently, right now, assessing opportunities to actually now take it from a trial and into actual practice on a couple of projects. When you think that Victoria's got 6 or 7 million timber sleepers still in its network around the place that will need to be replaced, and we're certainly not going to replace them with hardwood timber again. Recycled plastic might be a solution, and maybe the solution for that, from a maintenance DOT perspective, but also for new projects as they come along. And I mentioned noise walls before, and some of you may have seen the media opportunities that have come around recycled plastic noise walls. We're so excited about the Mordialloc bypass freeway that converted what was a standard noise wall design into a recycled plastic design. It had 75% recycled plastic in it. It also, half of that plastic is the soft film plastic, the sort of cling wrap type stuff, which has been almost impossible to find uses for, recycled purposes for. So really happy to have actually been able to do that, and achieve some great outcomes. And right now, again, the work is being done to actually create a standard or a specification that will allow recycled plastic to be used as a noise wall going forward. And when you look at it, those noise walls are just they're like a facade, really, and they have something to do, which is to bounce noise back off it and protect noise from getting through. They also need to be rigid. They need to be able to stand up. They need to be fire resistant and thermal resistant and UV resistant and those types of things. So there's a specification that's currently in draft being built around this trial. But it took a fair bit of goodwill and a fair bit of effort to actually get to that point. And I guess it sort of reflects back when you go into your Recycle First plan, early engagement, early ideas, and then there was a huge amount of work to be done to break through what are the norms and the standards and specifications and the expectations of people to actually get this approved and get this to actually happen. So it can happen. You come along with an idea and think, well, I want to get more. I want to do something different. There's been a bit of a history in the past of saying, oh, well, if it's not the spec, the superintendent's not going to allow it. It's too hard. I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to follow the standard and the spec. And I think what we're seeing with the 30% RAP example that I spoke about, and now more particularly with this recycled plastic noise wall, and with the recycled plastic railway sleeper, changing the world is what we're here for, and what you're here for, and what I'm here for. So let's do it. It's doable. Just already in the Recycle First plans, we're seeing a much greater commitment to using recycled plastic drainage pipes as an option that probably weren't considered so much in the past. So, the opportunities are out there. We just got to find them and work to push them through. And that's sort of the end of the road for me. Really happy to field any questions. And I'll just reiterate that email address again, ecologic@roadprojects.vic.gov.au. Been through a fair bit today. The slides will be available. But if you've got any questions that you want to take or you think about after this presentation, really happy to take them on that email address. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony, for your insights. I think the staggering thing for me is the innovation that's going on within this space is just enormous. And, you think about the impossible 5 years ago is now becoming the possible. And, I compliment you and your team. And there's been a lot of chat going on whilst you've been presenting, and just acknowledging your colleagues, Luke Host and Swee Lay. I think, it's been really good conversations that the two have been having. And I think, from my perspective, as we're going and coming through COVID, we are seeing a lot of pressure put on the supply chain for major projects. And without this innovation, particularly around sustainable products coming into the market, we are going to have a shortfall. And we know that with extractive materials, the talking with associations like the Cement, Concrete and Aggregates Australia, we know that there's a shortage of quarrying materials. There's some great work, and I see Tony Haycock on board from Downer. I notice he's got a New Zealand address, so we're even getting interest from across the Tasman, Tony, with Tony Haycock here. But I know Downer's been doing a lot of work. Can I just ask you a quick question about your involvement with Sustainability Victoria? And you touched on potentially local government and moving with Department of Transport, with Vic Roads getting into their specs from January next year. What sort of engagement are you having with Sustainability Victoria, and in particular at local government level?
Yeah, thanks, John. So Sustainability Victoria are we've got a really close working relationship, and we're closely in partnership. I think there's two things with Sustainability Victoria that are probably worth highlighting. Firstly, Ecologiq is going to apply the Recycled First policy to state government, and that is to the Big Build and to Department of Transport. Sustainability Victoria is working directly with local government on Recycled First principles and on the Recycled First policy. It's not mandated for local government. What we're finding is that local government have got a really strong interest in it, and so we're working closely with Sustainability Victoria to support methodologies for local government to actually apply recycling opportunities into their projects. That means sort of like I've done a number of these types of webinars that have been with local government. I've got another one coming up to actually talk about specific examples and specific opportunities and ways of going about it. I think it's a two-way street, though, because there's no doubt that a lot of suppliers can go to local government and get interest in a product that is perhaps outside the norm, outside the specification, that has a high sustainability rating, has really strong circular economy principles, and they can find a trial site that is perhaps on a lower risk type road, pavement, a local road that, that they're prepared to back, the supplier's prepared to back, and the local government is prepared to back as a place to actually prove, and if you like, proof of concept that this product can work. So I think that's happening, and then it filters up into state government, and we start looking at it a bit more seriously in terms of standards and specifications, and with the heavier load type application.
Yeah, so it probably leads in, and I saw Luke respond to Paul Dixon, and Paul's joined us from the North East Link project this morning, relating to the lifespan of recycled materials and getting that warranty going. And I know, as you do proof of concept and a lot of work being done with people like ARB and Monash, you mentioned, getting that sort of underwritten quality assurance from product innovation is going to be important moving forward. It is a bit of a leap of faith, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, but it's a leap of faith with some
knowledge.
behind it, if you like. Trust the science, as they say, as people keep telling us. And the leap of faith is that as we progress these products and they find their way into standards and specifications, they're now a standard or a specification, right? So they're in the specification. They therefore meet the requirements, which include, which verify that they perform to the standards that are required. You'll still have your 2-year defects liability periods or whatever they are that go with it. I will add those recycled plastic railway sleepers and noise walls, they're going to last for 40 years. I mean, that's how long they're going to last. The designs and the work we've done with them, take into account UV protection, because plastic can degrade over time. They take into account thermal expansion. They take into account fire resistance and what have you. Reclaimed asphalt's been done forever. And when you look internationally, the levels of reclaimed asphalt we're putting in, there are other jurisdictions doing more than that around the world. So there's some science behind this. There's work that ARRB and others do with these products to actually prove them up as well. At the same time, it's new and it's an innovation, and with any newness and innovation, there's always that, you call it leap of faith. You put a leap of faith with some real structure in that behind it. Hey, or every product was an innovation at some stage, so people. Yeah,
that's right. Look, there's a really good question here from Chris Marriott, Teletrack Navman, talking about as with social inclusion projects and training and skills guarantees, it's about making sure that they're actually implemented through the course of the project. So what process have we got happening within the Big Build program to make sure that contractors are actually using recycled products and they're being monitored as part of their tender and contract basis?
Yeah, so it's a really good question. So if you go back to where I talked about the Recycled First plan, it's actually a requirement and actually completed as part of the tender submission. And then at the point of having locked in suppliers and opportunities and having investigated those that we do with the contractor as well, we then say that's the expectation. Within the contract, there is then this reporting requirement that says, just like you provide your monthly or quarterly report, but let's say a monthly report that asks for some money. The contractor says, here's a bill for what I've done. It says, here's my social inclusion requirements, whether it's, whatever that may be. And it also says, here's my recycled content report. I've got that table that you saw earlier. So they report directly against that and say, yes, we have done 1,000 tonne of asphalt this month and 30% of that had reclaimed asphalt in it. That's verified through, and obviously, we take that as read and we expect that that's what the supplier has done. The opportunity then is for the sustainability leads to do audits and check and verify those types of things. Pretty easy to see whether crushed concrete's been used in a pavement or not. You can just sort of look at it. So recycled plastic drainage pipe. But yeah, there is that evidence-based piece that says, yes, you must report just like you do all your other standard reporting. But also there's audit, site management approaches.
And inspection points. I see a little bit of chat between Zui and our Lisa Kinross, our GM of Training and Operations here at CCF, and talking about buyer and supplier exchange once that's been set up, and presentation notes from the first Shark Tank session. I love the Shark Tank concept. I think we all understand that. I think that's a great way to get new innovative products to market, and we can help promote that with some case studies in our CCF Bulletin magazine, which comes out on a quarterly basis, and share that with the broader industry.
Great, let's do that. Hey, let's do that.
Yeah,
I want to say we did that the day after the lockdown, the lockdown commenced. So it was like, and a lot of people still piled in, and it was like, well, let's have some fun as well.
Yeah,
we're stuck in lockdown again, but this is actually a fun way of doing something useful.
As long as you're not asking me to go on Big Brother or Married at First Sight with my old cricketing colleague John Aiken. So,
you look like that. You look like you might do well on maths or?
No. I'm not going to maths. Don't worry about that. I know John too well. Just with regards to the recycle first policy, when do the commitments to that need to be finalised? The quantities and the supplier information. I mean, you're putting the plan together. When does that commitment in the recycle first plan need to be finalised?
Oh, look, that's a really good question, because when we set this up, we did it in theory and we did it in how we thought it would work, and with all the best of intentions. So we said, build your recycled first plan through your tender phase, and then at the time, and in this particular case, the type of contract is a TOC based contract that a number of Civil Contractor Federation members are now winning work on, like Fulton Hogan and others, and they reached their TOC phase. And we had said at that point, when the contract signed, there will be a recycled first plan that has that table, and that table will be completed, and we'll go from there. What we found, and quite reasonably in working with the contractor, was that it wasn't as simple as that. Firstly, some of the project designs aren't complete at that point. We still sign a contract and get that going, but the design isn't complete, so you can't be absolutely sure what you're committing to. And secondly, some of the suppliers, particularly as you stage through the project, haven't been locked in by the contractor at that point, and they're not committing to locking in the supplier. So we sort of understand that. And we're working through changing up the way that's done. Again, this is like what we call an alpha phase of recycle first. It's like the first, so we're going to learn as we go. So we really want to be flexible about this ourselves. And it's one of the reasons why we say optimize, not maximize, is that we recognize that there are challenges. There are going to be challenges, like you saw in Fulton Hogan's plan, along the way. So we're now saying, and we'll start to structure this up in collaboration with the contracting world, that at the time that you submit your tender, it'll be a great time to make those sorts of commitments about the types of things you're going to do. Yes, I am going to pursue reclaimed asphalt, crushed concrete, plastic pipes, plastic noise wall, or whatever, or a crumbed rubber thing here. We'll say, right, there's your commitments. We're not locking you into a quantity or an absolute number just yet, but sometime over the coming months, as you firm up who your suppliers are and what the design of the project is going to look like, we'll firm those up. Now, exactly when that is, I hope it's within the first 6 months of a project, that we might say that's the point at which we can sort of call it and go from there. And again, if there's good reason why we can bring it earlier, that'd be great. And if there's reasons why it makes sense to actually extend it because we might actually get a better outcome, we're going to be open to those sort of discussions. Like I said, this is alpha phase stuff. It's new, and like anything new, you'll learn as you go.
Yeah, no, thanks. No, look, I'm conscious of time. We've run a little bit over, but as I wanted, like most of these presentations with subject matter experts, it's the richness of the conversation that you get out of it, and I don't want to stop that. But I do have one last question for you, which is top of my mind. We're seeing, particularly from the government, a major injection of funds into projects, major infrastructure projects, and we're seeing, particularly around innovation in this space, are there government grants that might be available to contractors to support them implement their recycle first policy?
Yeah, so absolutely is the answer to that. I think when we were talking about Sustainability Victoria before, they have regular. They're the ones who have the purse strings in terms of grant money. To be clear, and that's in terms of research and development, and in terms of application of demonstration of ideas through to fruition. Usually what they will pick a particular a need or topic or what have you. So they've had one through plastics, and now got one open right now about organics. So right now there's money available for people to develop solutions for using organics in whatever application. It's not just construction. It could be for any world, like landscaping businesses or what have you. Usually those things require a bit of a research partner and a contractor or a deliverer, someone who's actually going to turn what is an idea into an on the ground solution. And those grants are open now for organics, and I think we'll see other materials and other priority products come to market with opportunities to do so. At the same time, the federal government has opportunities for suppliers to support them in developing their manufacturing facilities or ability to supply as well. So it's a whole maze of things in government to actually find your way through. But
I know it well, Tony.
If you get on the Sustainability Victoria website, you'll see what they've got available, when they've got it, and what their expectations are. So go and have a look.
Great. Look, thanks, Tony. For those who've attended today, the handouts, the handout there, particularly around the Recycle First Plan template, is available. So please go in and download that. Also, if you haven't completed the poll, there are 4 questions there, and good cross section of contractors across sectors. Interesting, Tony, that 61% of the people who polled aren't actually contracted to a transport infrastructure project. So quite a lot of new people that aren't necessarily engaged in the transport sector that are expressing interest, which is fantastic. On behalf of everyone, Tony, can I please say a big thank you to you and your team for the informative online masterclass here today, and particularly your continued support of CCF and the important work we do for and on behalf of the civil construction industry here in this state. So thank you very much, Tony. Our next major event, our next CCF major event, subject to COVID-19 restrictions, of course, is our road sector breakfast, which is being held at Kooyong Lawn Tennis Club. It's on Friday, the 25th of June in the morning, where we'll hear from Department of Transport's Regional Roads Director, Paul Northey. And again, Tony, a great chance for you to come back and share the work that you've been doing, particularly putting a lens on Department of Transport and the roads sector with Paul. So I look forward to meeting you. And for those who are online who may have some colleagues that would be interested in hearing again from Tony, I'd encourage you to come along to that breakfast. Also, save the date. We've rescheduled our rail sector breakfast for Friday the 23rd of July, so you can put that in your diary. And we've got the Director General of Major Transport Infrastructure Authority in Corey Hannett. Corey's a top speaker. Always hard to get into Corey's diary, and we've been able to do that and to get him to speak to our membership base. And he'll be joined by Acciona Geotech's lead, Bede Noonan, and Bede's going to give us some great insights, particularly into the Southern Program Alliance and the LXRA program that he was leading on behalf of Acciona Geotech. For those of you participating in today's webinar who are not CCF members, why not find out more about our work and the benefits that membership can bring by going to our CCF website at www.ccfvic.com.au, or you can ring the team at 1300 dial CCF. You can see on the left-hand side of your screen a pop-up which Julie has put in. You can click there to find out more information about becoming a member. Once again, thank you for this morning. We will be sending a follow-up email to those participants with a summary of the slides that Tony has presented. Can I ask you all to keep safe and to keep well in these challenging times? Thank you and good morning.